The cabin crouched against the snowy foothills of the Teton Range, as if trying to disappear into the frozen earth itself. Its cedar walls were scarred by wind and time. The porch half collapsed under the weight of unshoveled ice. Inside, the air smelled of pine resin, old smoke, and lives long gone, as though the house had been holding its breath for years. To Olivia Carter, abandoned in her third trimester and with no one left in the world but her German shepherd, Ranger, this forsaken refuge was not ruin, it was survival. The money she once saved for a crib and painted stars on a nursery ceiling had instead bought this forgotten cabin in Jackson, Wyoming. As she stepped over piles of discarded belongings, one hand bracing the ache of her swollen belly, Ranger froze ears forward. Hackles raised. Something glimmered beneath a broken trunk buried in dust. Not gold, not danger, but a key that did not belong to her. Or perhaps a key meant for her all along. Snow drifted across the highway like a restless tide of ghosts, the wind tearing at the world with a cold that felt personal. Olivia Carter tightened her grip on the steering wheel of her 10-year-old SUV, the dashboard blinking warnings she no longer had the strength to care about. She was 31, 7 months pregnant, and the only heartbeat in the world she could still trust was the steady pulse of her German shepherd beside her. Ranger, 5 years old with thick sable fur and amber eyes, sat upright in the passenger seat, ears twitching at every gust of wind. He was large and powerful, muscles evident beneath his winter coat, but his gaze was gentle whenever it settled on her. He had been trained as a service dog for veterans, but somehow he had found her instead. As if destiny had reassigned his purpose, Olivia's thoughts spiraled back, uninvited, to the moment everything had fallen apart. She saw Michael's face again, impeccably groomed dark hair, tailored suit, eyes like polished steel, cold, measured, incapable of mercy. When she told him she was pregnant, he didn't shout, didn't argue. He simply closed the closet door where his shirts hung in careful color order and said, "I was clear from the beginning. Olivia, fatherhood isn't part of my plan." Within 24 hours, he was gone, leaving behind only silence and a note that read, "It's better you start over without me." Her mother's voice echoed neck sharp, tight with judgment. 7 years with that man, and this is what you bring us. Shame. Her friends drifted away too, uncomfortable with the messiness of heartbreak and single motherhood. In less than a week, her life was uprooted, and she stood at the center of the wreckage utterly alone, except for Ranger, who had nudged her trembling hand and laid his head in her lap as if promising, "I'm still here." The GPS flickered as the SUV climbed higher into the mountainous outskirts of Jackson, Wyoming. The road narrowed, hemmed in by pines bowed beneath thick snow. Olivia's breath trembled. The cabin was only 15 minutes away, its location described in a listing that sounded more like a warning than an invitation. Historic mountain property. Sold as is. No utilities guaranteed. Must be willing to restore. She hadn't hesitated. She wired every last cent she had saved for her unborn child's nursery and signed the deed before she could lose her nerve. Anything was better than staying in the city where every street corner held a memory. At last, the cabin appeared, half hidden behind a copse of pine trees, its roof sagging beneath a load of snow, its windows dull with grime. The logs were silvered with age, the porch rail broken in places. It looked abandoned by the world itself, yet something in Olivia's chest loosened at the sight of it, like a breath she hadn't known she'd been holding, finally releasing. She parked beside a drift and shut off the engine. The silence outside was immense. No cars, no neighbors, only the whisper of falling snow. Ranger leapt from the SUV, landing softly, nose to the ground, tail held high. Olivia stepped out carefully, boots crunching in the frost, one hand instinctively supporting her belly. Every movement she made reminded her of the life inside her, a life she had not planned for, but one she now loved with a fierce, aching protectiveness. The front door creaked when she opened it, releasing a breath of cold. Stale air scented faintly with lavender and smoke. Dust floated in sunbeams filtering through cracks in the boarded windows. Furniture sat beneath moth-eaten sheets. Jars of herbs lined a shelf in perfect order. Labels written in elegant cursive. Olivia's eyes caught a framed photograph half buried in a pile of old quilts. A woman stood in front of the cabin, silver hair braided over one shoulder, eyes sharp yet kind. Beneath it, a name, Margaret Hale, 1931-2019. Olivia knelt to retrieve the photo, her breath shallow. She did not know Margaret, yet the air in the room felt charged, almost watchful, as if the house itself was waiting to see what she would do. Ranger trotted deeper into the cabin and stopped before a rocking chair. Nose pressed to the wood. Olivia followed, noticing a folded blanket draped across it, still smelling faintly of cedar. A notebook lay open beside it, pages yellowed with time. She traced the inked words on the first page. This house is not for the faint-hearted. It is for the broken-hearted, so they might learn to rise again. Olivia felt her knees weaken. She sank into the rocking chair, the wood groaning beneath her weight, but holding firm. For the first time in months, she did not feel like she was falling. She felt held, and that terrified her, because it meant that something here was calling to her, something that had been waiting. She rested her hand on her belly. Ranger lay at her feet, head resting over her boots, eyes fixed on the darkened hallway ahead, as though watching for something unseen. "We're staying," she whispered, though the words felt more like a reply than a decision, as if someone else had spoken first. The storm had deepened overnight, turning the world beyond the cabin into a shifting wall of white. Wind groaned against the window frames like some ancient creature trying to claw its way inside. Olivia Carter woke to the sound of scratching, not at the door, but beneath her feet. Ranger stood in the center of the main room, head lowered, ears pinned forward, paws digging urgently at a warped plank in the floor. His breath steamed in the cold air as he looked back at her, eyes sharp with insistence. Olivia's heart beat faster. She knelt carefully, each movement slow under the weight of her pregnancy. The floorboard was loose, long warped by time, and with a steady press of her fingers, it lifted, revealing a dark cavity below. The smell that drifted up was not rot, but something older, dry and preserved, like cedar and forgotten herbs. Inside the hidden compartment rested a wooden box, crafted from walnut and carved with symbols she didn't recognize: spirals, branches, and a single star at the center. Despite the dust, the box looked untouched by decay, its brass lock still gleaming faintly in the lantern light. Next to it lay a leather-bound journal, its edges worn from touch, the name Margaret Hale pressed into its cover in faded gold leaf. Olivia's fingers trembled as she lifted the journal. The moment her skin touched the worn leather, her unborn child shifted sharply, a firm kick against her ribs, not painful, but urgent, alive, awake. A strange chill ran down Olivia's spine. She settled into the rocking chair, the box heavy on her lap, Ranger at her feet. She opened the journal to the first page where delicate handwriting curved across the paper. November 3rd, 1973, if someone finds this, it means you were meant to. This cabin doesn't choose by accident. Olivia paused. Breath hitched. The words seemed to speak directly to her, as though Margaret had written them for this exact moment. She continued reading. The entries told the story of a younger Margaret arriving at the cabin, heavily pregnant and alone. Betrayed by the father of her child, a wealthy businessman who had promised marriage, then vanished when he learned of her condition. "I could not face the shame," Margaret wrote. "I came here to disappear. I was ready to let winter take me. Instead, this house found me." Olivia felt a lump in her throat. Ranger nuzzled her knee, sensing her emotion. She stroked his fur absently, lost in the words. As she read further, the tone of the entry shifted. Margaret described strange occurrences in the house lights flickering without oil, doors that opened on their own, the scent of herbs filling rooms unbidden. One line stood out sharply. "There is a presence here. It is not here to harm me. It is waiting for the child." Olivia looked toward the dark hallway leading to the back bedrooms, suddenly aware of how still the air had become, as if the entire house were holding its breath. She turned back to the box. The lock had no key, yet as her fingers brushed over its lid, she felt a subtle click beneath her touch, like the box had recognized her. Slowly, the lid creaked open. Inside was a set of iron keys, each different in size and shape. Beside them lay a folded letter sealed with wax, the imprint of the same star carved on the box. Her name was written across it. Olivia. Her vision blurred. She pressed a hand to her belly as the baby shifted again. Stronger this time? Ranger gave a low whine but did not move, as though he too were waiting. With trembling hands, she broke the seal. To the woman who comes after me, the letter began. You carry more than a child. You carry a turning of fate. The house chose you as it chose me. Do not be afraid of the whispers. They are memories, they are warnings, and they are promises. Olivia's breath came shallow. She read on. I did not die as the town believes. I crossed over to protect what this house was built for. When the time comes, follow the keys. They will show you what must be done. A sudden bang echoed through the cabin. Olivia jolted upright, clutching Ranger's fur. The sound had come from the back of the house, a door slamming shut, though no wind had entered. The lantern flickered once, twice, then steadied. Olivia rose, lifting the box, the letter still open in her hand. With slow steps, she followed Ranger down the hallway. The cabin was silent, yet Olivia felt no malice in the air, only anticipation, like the moment before a curtain rises. She touched her belly again as the baby pressed outward, a heartbeat against her palm. We're not alone, she whispered. And though the words were soft, they did not tremble. The wind had quieted by morning, leaving behind an eerie stillness that pressed against the cabin like a held breath. Olivia moved carefully through the hallway, following Ranger, who walked with rigid purpose, head low, tail level, nose twitching as if tracking a scent only he could detect. In her hand, she still held the letter from Margaret, its final words echoing in her mind. Follow the keys. She clutched the ring of iron keys she'd found in the box, their cold weight inexplicably comforting, as if each key whispered, you belong here. At the end of the hall stood a narrow door she hadn't noticed before. It blended with the wood-paneled walls, the grain almost seamless around it. Ranger stopped in front of it, glancing back at her, waiting. Olivia's breath fogged the air as she lifted the smallest of the keys, its head shaped like a four-pointed star, matching the symbol on the letter's seal. The lock accepted it with a soft click, like an exhale, and the door drifted open on its own as though pulled from within. A narrow staircase descended into darkness. The scent of dried herbs and aged paper drifted upward, mingled with something else, something warm, faintly sweet, like lavender and milk. Olivia hesitated at the top step, her free hand bracing her stomach as the baby shifted. Ranger descended first, silent and sure-footed. The lantern in Olivia's hand cast a golden circle of light across stone walls as she followed. The stairs opened into a chamber that took her breath away. Unlike the neglected upper rooms, this hidden space was immaculate. Shelves lined the walls, filled with jars of preserved botanicals. Swaddling cloths folded in perfect stacks. Glass bottles labeled in looping cursive. Chamomile for easing pain. Black cohosh for slow labor. Angelica root for strength of heart. In the center of the room stood a birthing chair carved from dark wood, its armrest polished smooth by countless hands. Beside it, a cradle rested beneath a canopy of lace, untouched by dust, as though waiting for a child that had not yet arrived or one that had never left. A journal lay open on a small table. Olivia approached, heart pounding. The entry was dated February 1974. Margaret's handwriting, steady and precise but heavy with emotion. Tonight I felt her move for the last time. The storm cut off all roads. The pain came too soon. I had only the herbs and my faith. When the quiet came, she was gone from my arms, but not from this room. Something held me when the darkness tried to take me. Something whispered, you are not done. Olivia felt a chill race down her spine. She looked at the cradle again, and though no wind stirred, the lace canopy swayed. Ranger let out a low rumble, not a growl, but a warning, protective and alert. Olivia lowered herself into the birthing chair, resting a hand on its smooth armrest. For a moment, she imagined the voices of women long gone, their breaths still lingering in the air, their courage etched into the stone floor. The baby kicked again, 3 strong pulses that made Olivia wince. It's okay, she whispered. I feel it too. Her voice sounded strange in the room, as though layered over another softer voice that spoke the same words decades before. A sudden knock echoed from upstairs. Olivia startled, the lantern's flame wavering. Ranger's ears snapped upward, and he bounded toward the staircase. barking once sharp and commanding. Olivia followed, one hand on the wall for support as she ascended. The knocking came again, louder this time, more insistent. When she reached the front door and pulled it open, a man stood on the porch dusted with snow. He was tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in a ranger's uniform beneath a heavy parka. His face was chiseled, with a strong jaw lightly dusted in stubble and eyes the pale blue of glacier ice observant. Cautious. "Ma'am," he said, removing his hat, "I'm Deputy Sheriff Daniel Reeves. We've had reports of someone moving into this property. There was no record of utilities being turned on, so I came to check for trespassers or welfare concerns." Olivia steadied herself. Daniel Reeves was in his mid-30s, visibly weathered by years in harsh terrain. A faint scar traced from his left eyebrow to his temple, a souvenir from an accident or fight long past. His manner was controlled, professional, but his eyes flickered briefly with something human concern. "I own this property," Olivia said, handing him the deed. "I moved in yesterday." Daniel examined the papers, nodding slowly. "This cabin has a reputation," he said carefully. "Locals avoid it. They say it doesn't like being empty." His gaze shifted to Ranger, who stood squarely between them, tail still, stance protective. "Good dog," he murmured. With the respect of a man who understood loyalty, Daniel hesitated before continuing. "I knew Margaret Hale, or rather, my mother did. She helped deliver me in this cabin. When Margaret disappeared, people said she walked into a storm and never came back. My mother always believed she didn't die, just changed." Olivia's pulse quickened. She stepped back from the doorway, allowing him inside. The lantern light flickered across Daniel's features, lighting the scar beside his eye. He scanned the room, gaze lingering not on the dust or decay, but on the open journal on the table. "You've already found her," he said softly. It was not a question. Olivia nodded, hand resting protectively over her abdomen. "And I think she's been waiting." Daniel met her eyes, steady and unflinching. "Then you'd better listen, because if Margaret chose you, it means winter brought you here for a reason." Outside, the wind howled again, no longer random, but almost like a voice answering. The blizzard had escalated into a white wall that erased the horizon. By late afternoon, the sky was indistinguishable from the ground, and the wind howled through the pines in long, mournful cries that vibrated against the cabin walls. Olivia Carter stood by the frost-laced window, one hand bracing the heavy swell of her belly, the other hovering over the cradle she had discovered in the hidden birthing chamber. Beside her, Ranger lay still but alert, golden eyes following every flicker of movement, every shift in the air. He did not growl. He watched as though guarding something unseen. Deputy Daniel Reeves had stayed longer than he intended. Practicality would have told him to leave before the worst of the storm, yet he lingered standing near the stone fireplace, as if anchored there by a force beyond weather. Now out of his uniform jacket, he wore a charcoal wool sweater stretched across solid shoulders, the faint scar near his left eye catching the firelight. His face was quiet but not unreadable. There was conflict there, a restrained tension in the set of his jaw. He had seen things Olivia sensed, and those things had carved out a deep stillness within him. "You should go before it gets any worse," Olivia said, her voice steady, though the room felt charged with something electric. Daniel stepped toward the window, gaze narrowed at the storm. "There's no going anywhere tonight. This isn't just snow, it's a full whiteout. If I try to drive in this, they'll be digging me out in spring." The lantern flickered. The temperature in the cabin dipped, the fire struggling against the sudden draft. Olivia glanced toward the hallway leading to the hidden birthing room. It was darker than before, a shadow pooled in the doorway despite the lantern light. She felt a subtle tug, not fear but summoning. Daniel noticed. "The house changes when the wind rises," he said quietly. "It remembers things when storms come." Before Olivia could reply, a thud sounded from the front porch, a heavy, deliberate impact. Ranger leapt to his feet, tail stiff, ears forward. He didn't bark. Instead, he walked to the door and stood perfectly still as if awaiting permission. Olivia's breath caught. No vehicle lights were visible through the snow. No tracks had appeared. Yet someone or something was outside. Daniel moved ahead of her, his movements controlled but tense. He pulled the door open. A woman stood there, half collapsed against the railing. Snow caked her hair and shoulders, eyelashes fused with ice lips blue. She looked to be in her late 20s, with ash blonde hair plastered to a narrow face, eyes a startling pale green. She was visibly pregnant, perhaps 8 months, wearing only a thin coat over a hospital gown. Help, she choked before her knees buckled. Daniel caught her in his arms in one swift motion. Olivia stepped aside instinctively, her heart pounding, a strange déjà vu overtaking her senses. Ranger circled the woman once, then sat beside her with a low, comforting whine. Daniel carried the woman to the couch by the fire. Olivia knelt beside her, feeling the woman's cold skin beneath her fingertips. "My name is Olivia," she said gently. "You're safe here." "What's your name?" The woman's eyes fluttered open. She whispered Grace. Olivia and Daniel exchanged a stunned glance. The name lingered in the air like a bell toll. Grace. The same name etched into Margaret's journal. The same name Olivia had seen near the cradle. Grace gasped as a contraction seized her, one hand clutching her belly. "They were taking us away," she groaned. "I ran. I didn't know where to go. I just ran into the storm." "Who?" Daniel asked, voice low, protective. Grace struggled to breathe. "People from the clinic. They said something was wrong with my baby, that they had to keep us for observation. But I heard them. I heard them talking when they thought I was asleep. They said the Hale house has awakened again. They said I wasn't the one it wanted." Olivia felt the blood drain from her face. She looked at the keys on the table. She looked toward the hidden hallway, and she understood the house had chosen her. And this woman, this Grace, had been drawn to them by that same invisible pull. Daniel placed a steadying hand on Olivia's shoulder. "We need to get her downstairs," he said. "To the room you found." Olivia hesitated. That room felt sacred, like a chapel carved beneath the earth. But the journal had been clear. The house was meant to guide and protect women in need. The snow roared against the walls. The temperature continued to drop. There was no time to doubt. Together, Olivia and Daniel carried Grace toward the secret room. Ranger went ahead, his steps sure and unwavering. As they descended, the lantern flame grew steadily brighter, casting golden light that seemed to emanate not from oil but from the very air itself. The birthing chair awaited. The cradle seemed to glow. And somewhere just beyond sight, Olivia felt the presence of Margaret Hale, no longer a ghost of sadness, but a guardian. She was not alone. None of them were. Morning arrived not with sunlight, but with a hush, a reverent stillness that rested over the cabin like a blessing. The blizzard had finally passed, leaving the world blanketed in soft light and crystalline snow. Olivia Carter woke in the birthing chamber, her body heavy but no longer gripped by pain. The contractions from the night before had subsided entirely, like a storm that had come only to deliver a message rather than a child. She blinked slowly, realizing she was not lying on the cold floor where she had last stood beside Grace, but in the birthing chair, a thick knitted blanket draped over her. The yarn was faded blue handwoven, smelling of lavender and something softer, rosewater perhaps. It was not hers. On the table beside her was a steaming cup of herbal tea. Rising tendrils of steam curled upward as if reaching for her. Her heart thudded. Someone had placed it there. Someone had covered her. Ranger sat at her feet, head resting on his paws. His amber eyes regarded her quietly, not alarmed but deeply aware. The kind of awareness that came from seeing something beyond the physical. Olivia placed her palm over her abdomen. The baby was calm, peaceful. Breathing in the air of this room felt like breathing for the first time. Memory returned. Grace had gone into labor. Daniel and Olivia had brought her down here. But the moment Grace had been settled onto the birthing cot, something had happened. Olivia could still see Grace's wide, tear-filled eyes as a gentle warmth had filled the room, as though invisible arms had wrapped around them. The pain in Olivia's own body had risen not from labor, but from resonance, as if the room itself was pulsing with every heartbeat of both mothers. The last thing she remembered was Ranger pressing his head against her knee and the lantern flame brightening without oil. Now Grace was gone. Not dead, not missing in fear. Olivia could feel it with certainty. Grace had been delivered safely somewhere within this house, in a place the living could not easily reach. The birthing room did not feel empty. It felt completed. Olivia rose slowly, the blanket slipping from her shoulders. She carried the tea with trembling hands and climbed the stairs. The cabin above was warm, the fire burning steadily, despite no one tending it. Fresh logs had been added to the hearth. Olivia paused, heart pounding. Someone had been here, but not an intruder, a caretaker. On the kitchen table rested a single folded sheet of paper weighed down by a smooth riverstone. Olivia recognized the elegant handwriting. It was Margaret's. The house does not take. It returns. Grace was never lost. She has been given to the room where time folds, where mothers are remembered. You are ready, Olivia. The keys have accepted you. This house chose you to finish what I began, not a place for sorrow, but for rebirth. Olivia traced the words with her fingertip. Tears filled her eyes, not of fear, but of clarity. She understood now the cabin was not haunted. It was alive with purpose. A sanctuary forged by the pain of generations now awakening to its true calling. It did not belong to the dead. It belonged to the living. Footsteps sounded behind her, soft, steady. Daniel Reeves stood in the doorway, still in last night's clothes, but different somehow. The tension in his face had eased. His blue eyes were no longer guarded. There was awe in them. Reverence, she's safe, he said quietly, answering the question Olivia hadn't spoken. I don't know how I know it, but I do. Grace is alive, and she's with her. He didn't need to say the name. It hovered in the air gently, lovingly. Margaret Hale. Olivia nodded. The baby within her shifted, but not in distress. The movement was calm, assured. She rested both hands over her abdomen and looked toward the birthing room's hidden door. This place is not an ending, she whispered. It's the beginning of something that was always meant to return. Daniel stepped closer, not intruding but offering silent support. Ranger rose and moved toward the front door, tail slowly wagging as though urging them forward. Olivia followed as Daniel opened the door. Outside, the world glittered under a pale sun. Snowdrifts gleamed like soft silver. The sky above the Teton Range was clear, and just above the tallest peak hung an astonishing ring of light, a perfect halo encircling the sun. Ethereal. Holy. Daniel drew a sharp breath. It's called sun halo, he murmured. Locals say it's a sign, a beginning. Olivia stepped onto the porch, Ranger pressing close to her side. The baby within her moved again, 3 gentle pulses, as if acknowledging the world that awaited. She closed her eyes, letting the cold air kiss her face. For the first time, she was not running from something. She was standing at the threshold of destiny. The cabin behind her was no longer a ruin. It was a promise, a sacred space for every woman who had been abandoned, forgotten, or left in the cold. And Olivia Carter, the woman who had come here to disappear, was the one chosen to bring it back to life. There are moments in life when we are brought to the edge of everything we thought we were, only to discover that God was not leading us to ruin. He was leading us to renewal. Olivia did not find this cabin by accident. She was guided to it, just like many of us are guided, even in our darkest nights, toward places we never expected, so that our broken hearts could witness the quiet miracles we had stopped believing in. This story is not just about a woman finding a home. It is about a soul finding its purpose. It is about remembering that God never abandons us. He redirects us. When the world turns its back, when people fail us, when hope seems buried beneath the snow, His hand is still there, clearing a path only He can see. Sometimes the miracle is not loud. It does not arrive with thunder or trumpets. Sometimes the miracle is a cradle preserved by time, a lantern that never goes out, a heartbeat inside a weary mother, reminding her that heaven still has plans for her life. And maybe tonight, as you watch this, that miracle is reaching out to you. If you believe God still performs miracles, share this video with someone who needs hope. Leave a comment about a moment in your life when you felt God's hand even in hardship. Subscribe to this channel for more stories that remind us that His light still shines in the darkest valleys. May the Lord bless every mother, every father, every lost soul watching this right now. May His peace surround your home, and may His guidance lead you exactly where you are meant to be. Amen.